39 years old, Eamon believed his life was a testament to quiet stability. He earned, according to the W-2 from Trinity Field Services, a respectable $72,400 a year as a mid-level logistics manager. He lived in a restored 1920s craftsman home in Fort Worth's Mistletoe Heights, a neighborhood of old trees and proud settled families. He had been married to Aria for 8 years, a woman whose beauty still made the air in a room feel thin. It was a life built of tangible things: the worn leather of his work boots, the hum of the refrigerator, the scent of coffee at 5:15 a.m. He thought this foundation was made of stone. He had no idea he was living in a house of cards, and a sharp wind was coming. The moment it all fell apart was a Tuesday, October 17th at 7:42 p.m. Rain slicked the windows, blurring the autumn streetlights into long, hazy streaks. It was the kind of weather that made a warm house feel like a sanctuary. Eamon had just finished cleaning the kitchen after dinner, the scent of lemon dish soap hanging in the air. Aria walked in, not in the comfortable lounge clothes she usually wore at home, but in a sharp, black $1,700 Helmut Lang blazer and dark jeans that looked like they had been tailored to her body. She was holding a sleek, cream-colored leather portfolio that he'd never seen before. It probably cost more than his monthly truck payment. She didn't look at him. She placed the portfolio on the gleaming $4,000 quartz countertop he had installed himself 2 summers ago. The sound was a soft, definitive thud. "Eamon, we need to talk," she said. Her voice was flat, stripped of the warmth he was accustomed to. It was the voice she used with contractors or incompetent waiters. He dried his hands on a dish towel. His hands were calloused, the knuckles slightly scarred from years of working with tools and machinery. He looked at her, at the perfect arch of her brows, the deep brown skin of her face that seemed to glow even in the dim kitchen light, and the intricate pattern of the Senegalese twists that fell over her shoulders. She was breathtaking, and she was a stranger. "What's wrong, Aria?" he asked, his own voice low and steady. She finally met his eyes. There was no sadness there, no conflict. There was only a cool, polished resolve, like a piece of sea glass worn smooth of all its sharp edges. "This isn't working," she said. "It hasn't been working for a very long time." Eamon felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. He had thought things were fine. Not perfect, not the breathless romance of their first few years, but comfortable, solid. "What are you talking about?" She laughed, a short, sharp sound with no humor in it. "Oh, Eamon, please don't play dumb. Look at us. Look at you." She gestured vaguely at him, at his simple cotton t-shirt and worn jeans. "You come home every day smelling of diesel and dirt. You're happy with your projects, your tools, this simple little life." She said the word simple like it was a disease. "I provide for us," he said, his voice quiet. "We have a good life." "A good life?" This time the laugh was louder. It was incredulous, laced with a cruelty that physically hurt him. "Eamon, my friends' husbands are closing multi-million-dollar deals. They're flying to Dubai for the weekend. They have vision, ambition. What do you have? A pension plan and a favorite pair of work boots?" The reference to his worn, $280 Red Wing boots by the back door felt like a deliberate, targeted jab. He had resoled them 3 times. "What is in the portfolio, Aria?" he asked, his gaze falling back to the expensive leather case on the counter. She slid it toward him. "That's from my attorney. I've filed for divorce." The words hung in the air heavier than the silence that followed. Divorce. The word itself felt foreign, something that happened to other people in other houses. He felt his throat tighten. He didn't open the portfolio. He couldn't. "Why?" he managed to ask, the single word feeling like a piece of gravel he had to force out. Aria picked an invisible piece of lint from her blazer. She looked past him, out the window at the rainy street, as if she were already somewhere else. Because I want more. I deserve more. I've outgrown this, Eamon. I've outgrown you. She finally looked back at him, her eyes sweeping over his solid frame, his simple clothes, his work-roughened hands. A small, dismissive smile touched her lips. It was the most devastating expression he had ever seen. "Let's be honest," she said, her voice dropping to a confidential, cutting whisper. "I'm way out of your league. I always have been. And I'm finally ready to be free." That was the line. The one that severed the last thread of their 8 years together. It wasn't just a breakup. It was an erasure, a judgment. He wasn't just being left. He was being deemed unworthy. He stood there in his quiet, comfortable kitchen, a ghost in his own life, while the woman he loved looked at him like he was a dusty piece of furniture she was finally getting rid of. And in that moment, Eamon, the man who owned 14 oilfield service companies and a portfolio valued at just over $500 million, felt utterly and completely worthless. He had no idea how wrong he was. The facade of their life had been meticulously constructed, but only he knew it was a one-way mirror. From her side, she saw a simple, transparent existence. From his, he saw everything. Their life was a collection of domestic scenes, each one tagged with a price that told two very different stories. On Saturday mornings, Eamon would be up at dawn. He'd put on a pot of coffee, the $12 bag of Heb Cafe au lait, not the fancy stuff Aria liked, and head out to the detached garage he'd converted into a workshop. The garage itself was a microcosm of his hidden life. To Aria, it was just a dusty space filled with Eamon's junk. To him, it was a sanctuary of order. A $15,000 array of snap-on tools hung on a perfectly organized pegboard. A Miller TIG welder, a $7,500 piece of equipment, sat in the corner, covered by a simple canvas tarp. He'd spend hours out there, rebuilding the carburetor for his neighbor's ancient lawnmower or fabricating a new wrought iron gate for their own garden. The sparks from his grinder, a silent, glittering fireworks show no one else saw. Aria would wake up around 9 a.m., wrap herself in a $450 silk robe, and come downstairs expecting her own special coffee made with a $600 Breville espresso machine and beans from a local roaster that cost $28 a pound. "Eamon, did you remember to get the Ethiopian Yirgacheffe?" she'd ask, wrinkling her nose at the smell of his simpler brew. "It's on the counter, babe," he'd say, walking in from the garage, wiping grease from his hands with a blue shop towel. She'd shrink away. "Don't touch the countertops with those hands," she'd chide gently, but with an edge. "I just had them cleaned." Those were the same $4,000 quartz countertops he had personally sourced and installed, saving them over $3,000 in labor, a fact he never mentioned. The money he saved went into a joint savings account, the same one she was now targeting. Their evenings were a study in contrast. He'd come home from his job, his truck a 2018 Ford F-150 that was technically a company vehicle, though it was registered to an LLC she'd never heard of. It was a practical work truck, its bed scratched, its cab smelling faintly of the West Texas dust he deliberately didn't clean out. He'd kick off his steel-toed boots at the door and change into a pair of comfortable jeans and a t-shirt. Aria, who worked part-time as a gallery consultant for a small, chic space in the arts district, would talk about her day. It was a world of wealthy patrons and eccentric artists. "You'll never guess who came in today," she'd say, pouring herself a glass of $90 Chardonnay. "Beverly Radcliffe. Her husband just sold his tech startup for $100 million. She bought a sculpture for $75,000 without even blinking." She would sigh, a delicate, frustrated sound. "It must be nice to just not have to worry." Eamon would nod, listening. He never said that the monthly dividend payment from just one of his smaller LLCs, a water reclamation plant in Midland, was more than the price of that sculpture. He'd just ask, How was the rest of your day? He played the part of the dutiful, simple husband. He packed his own lunch every morning in a beat-up igloo cooler he'd had for a decade. A turkey sandwich on whole wheat, an apple, and a bottle of water. It was the lunch of a man who makes $72,400 a year. It kept the illusion alive. Meanwhile, Arya would spend $25 on a salad and a green juice for her lunch, charging it to their joint credit card. He never complained. He just paid the bill at the end of the month, the $6,000 balance a mix of her expensive tastes and their shared household expenses. One particular memory stood out to him now. It was their anniversary, a few months before the divorce papers. He had made reservations at Grace, one of Fort Worth's most exclusive restaurants. He'd worn his best suit, a custom-tailored piece that had cost him $5,000 but looked understated. She had worn a stunning backless red dress, a $2,400 design from a boutique she loved. They were seated next to a table of men in loud, expensive suits, talking about oil and gas leases. One of them, a man with a booming voice and a massive gold watch, was holding court. Arya was captivated, listening to their talk of drilling rights and futures markets. "That's a real man," she had whispered to Eamon, her eyes shining. "A player. Someone who makes things happen." Eamon looked over at the man. He recognized him. He was a small-time operator who had tried to buy one of Eamon's subsidiary companies last year. Eamon's holding firm had rejected the offer as laughably low. The man's entire net worth was probably less than the value of the equipment on a single one of Eamon's work sites. Eamon just took a sip of his water. "He seems confident," was all he said. Later that night, back in their beautiful Mistletoe Heights home, a $450,000 property he had paid for in cash through a trust. Though the county records were shielded, and he let her believe they had a conventional mortgage, she had been distant. "Don't you ever want more, Eamon?" she'd asked, looking at him with an expression that mingled pity and frustration. "Don't you want to be one of those men?" "I'm happy with what we have," he'd replied, and it was the truth. He was happy with her, with their home, with the quiet life he had built for them. She had sighed and rolled away from him in their king-sized bed, a bed with a $3,500 mattress she had picked out. The space between them had felt as wide and cold as the plains of West Texas. He saw it all, the dollar-tag details of her dissatisfaction, the way she measured his worth against the flashy wealth of others. He saw it, and he kept his own counsel, maintaining the facade. He thought it was what she needed to feel secure, to not be burdened by the complexities of his real life. He thought he was protecting her. He never imagined she would see his quiet strength as weakness, his deliberate simplicity as a lack of ambition. He never imagined she saw him as a stepping stone she was now ready to kick away. The cruelty did not arrive all at once. It was a slow, escalating campaign, each new act of betrayal another layer of ice forming over the memory of their shared life. The outrage accumulated in Eamon's chest, a silent gathering pressure. The first official blow came a week after her announcement. It was a Saturday morning. Eamon was in the front yard, methodically pulling weeds from the flower beds that lined the walkway. A sleek white BMW 3 Series, a car worth about $43,000, pulled up to the curb. A man in a cheap-looking but sharply pressed suit got out. He was holding a large manila envelope. "Eamon Jabari?" the man asked, his tone bored. "That's me," Eamon said, standing up and brushing dirt from his jeans. The man handed him the envelope. "You've been served." He turned and got back into his car without another word. Eamon stood on his lawn, the crisp autumn air suddenly feeling cold. He opened the envelope. Inside was the official petition for divorce, filed in Tarrant County. Attached was a letter from Arya's attorney, a man named Marcus Thorne. The letter was a masterpiece of condescending legal jargon. It outlined Arya's demands. She wanted the house, the marital residence, arguing that she had grown accustomed to the neighborhood and had deep community ties. She wanted permanent alimony of $3,000 per month, citing her limited earning capacity and the lifestyle established during the marriage. And she wanted half of their liquid assets, which Thorne's letter confidently valued at approximately $224,000, held in a joint savings and brokerage account. The house he had paid for in cash. Alimony from a man she believed made $72,400 a year. It was preposterous. It was insulting. But most of all, it was a clear signal of her intent. She wasn't just leaving him. She was planning to strip him bare, leaving him with nothing but the dirt under his fingernails. He folded the papers neatly and went back to his weeding. His movements were calm, deliberate. Inside, a cold fire was beginning to burn. The second wave came via phone call. It was 2 days later, at 8:17 p.m. He was in his workshop, carefully cleaning a set of antique woodworking planes he'd bought at an estate sale. His phone buzzed. It was Arya. He hesitated, then answered, putting the call on speaker. "What do you want, Arya?" he asked. "I want to know why you haven't signed the papers yet," she snapped. Her voice was sharp, impatient. "Marcus said you were served on Saturday. Just sign them, Eamon. Don't make this difficult." "It's a little more complicated than just signing," he said, his voice even. "You're asking for the house." She scoffed. The sound crackled through the speaker. "Of course I'm asking for the house. Where else am I supposed to live? You can get a cheap apartment in the North Side or something. That's more your speed anyway, isn't it?" The North Side, the historic, working-class heart of Fort Worth. The place where his own grandfather, a proud black man who worked at the Swift and Kerber meatpacking plant for 40 years, had raised his family. She said it like it was a slum. And the alimony, Arya, on a $72,000 salary? Don't be so dramatic. You'll manage. Or you could finally get a real job. You know, my friend Jessica's husband just got promoted to senior vice president. He makes $400,000 a year. That's what ambition looks like. There was a pause. When she spoke again, her voice was laced with venom. "Finally, I'm free to be with someone who matters, Eamon. Someone who isn't covered in rig dust." He heard a man's voice in the background, muffled but clear. "Is that him? Tell him to hurry up." Arya's tone shifted, becoming syrupy and false. "I have to go, Eamon. Just sign the papers. It's better for everyone." She hung up. He stood motionless in the quiet of his workshop, the scent of oil and old wood filling his senses. Someone who matters. The words echoed in the space around him. He had built a $500 million empire from nothing, silently, meticulously, while playing the part of a simple man for her, and she was leaving him for someone who mattered. The irony was so bitter it tasted like rust. He took a deep breath, picked up a soft cloth, and went back to polishing his tools. Each stroke was measured, controlled. A storm was building inside him, but on the surface, there was only a dead, chilling calm. The public humiliation was the third, and perhaps cruelest, cut. It happened at Central Market on a Sunday afternoon. Eamon was in the produce section deciding between organic kale and regular. It was a simple, mundane task. Then he heard her laugh. That bright, tinkling laugh he had once loved, now a sound that set his teeth on edge. He turned. There she was, standing near the artisanal cheese counter. She was with a tall, handsome man with perfectly coiffed hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He wore a ridiculously expensive-looking watch. A Panerai, Eamon noted, probably a $9,000 model, and a cashmere sweater that likely cost more than Eamon's entire wardrobe. Arya was clinging to his arm, looking up at him with adoration. She was wearing a flowing white dress, looking every bit the part of the wealthy man's partner. Their eyes met across a display of overpriced olives. For a moment, A flicker of panic crossed her face. Then it was gone, replaced by a mask of cool superiority. She whispered something to the man, and then